You're listening to Closing Market Weekly, the show where real estate closings meet real-world insight. With your host, Phillip Hogan, and every week we break down the trends, tools, and the timing that keeps deals moving forward. Let's dive in. Hi, I'm Phillip Hogan, host of Closing Market Weekly. Many of you may know me as the CEO of Signing Services of America. Since 2016, I've worked with hundreds of professionals across the mortgage and real estate settlement space, from title agents and escrow officers to lenders, attorneys, and notaries. One thing I've noticed in this industry, we often talk to each other, but not with each other. That's why Closing Market Weekly was created, to offer a space for honest, practical conversations about the real issues, challenges, and trends shaping the closing market. Today's guest is someone I've had the pleasure of working closely with over the past 5 or 6 years. Jim O'Donnell is the president of Equity National Title. Jim's been at the helm for over 35 years. He graduated with a BA in English from Rhode Island College and went on to attend and graduate from law school of Suffolk University. Before beginning his career at Equity, he worked in customer service and sales capacities and spent 8 years in local politics and city government. During that time, he ran 3 political campaigns and worked for 5 years for the mayor of Providence. Jim sees himself as a servant leader who enriches the lives of those with whom he interacts and enhances the work in which he's involved. He loves to solve vexing problems in collaboration with others and with customers. Jim enjoys coming alongside smart and creative people who bring different perspectives and ideas from other industries to help stir the imagination and collaborative solve perplexing issues. Jim leads the company's leadership teams and the company's business development activities while supporting strategic company relationships and championing strategic initiatives, including nurturing the company culture. He also closely tracks industry compliance and risk management trends to ensure compliance management systems stay ahead of the curve. For over 20 years, Jim was an active board member of the Rhode Island Mortgage Bankers Association, serving for 8 years in the chair of its legislative committee, and was recognized 3 times with the Distinguished Service Award. Jim has recently become active in Alta through serving on 3 committees. Jim is also a 6th member of C12, a faith-based organization which equips Christian business leaders to achieve excellence through the power of peers and provides a rigorous interactive monthly curriculum empowering his members to lean into challenges and leverage the opportunities in today's marketplace. He is a recipient of the organization's Barnabas Award to recognize him for demonstrating the value of encouragement of others. Over the past 10 years, Jim has been a distinguished panelist for October research webinars and conferences, and hosted a number of webinars on diverse topics with industry thought leaders. Jim and his wife, Lucille, live in North Kingston, Rhode Island, and have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Jim, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It sounds like an amazing story. I hope I live up to it.
Well, let's see. I'm sure you will. Let's help our audience believe that as well. So, Jim, a lot to talk about, and let's first start off with why the title space.
Yeah.
That's 35 years ago. What was it like, and what was going on for you to want to start a title company?
Well, it's like everybody. You don't go to school for this. You stumble into it. And I did as well. When I was finishing law school, a family member had an opportunity here at this company that had already been formed, and I joined it. And then just over time, began to enjoy it, seeing some challenges. You see me as a fit with some of my skills. It closely aligns with law, which was at the time, just coming out of law school, trying to figure out what I want to do with the degree. And I always envisioned myself in law school as there's really 2 choices that you face when you're an attorney. One is what I would call a litigator, and the other one is a counselor. And the litigator would be, I'm in court. and you're battling for people's rights and justice, etc. But you're in the ring, if you will. And the other would be around a table where you're providing counsel and advice and recommendations. And the around the table seemed more of a fit for me, which naturally looked like what that's basically what the title industry is. And I started out finding resonant space there for me and for my skill set, and over time grew into leadership responsibilities and guiding the company for the last 35 years.
That's impressive. And so in the 35 years of guiding the company, Jim, what goals did you initially have for the company? And would you share with us how you were able to scale those goals?
Yeah, I think we always saw the business as a little archaic. It was kind of very staid, had been largely dominated in the New England states by attorney-dominated, law firms, and they weren't necessarily effective, efficient, et cetera. We saw other models and elsewhere in the country, had some exposure to that, and started to see that there were other ways of doing business than just the way that had been done for 30, 50, 60 years in Rhode Island or the New England states. And so we started to, invent our way into those kinds of efficiencies or effectiveness. And we're basically challenging the status quo. There's another way to do it. There's perhaps a better way of doing it. And it just one thing led to another. We were fairly inventive, very creative, and we just continually iterated on advancing the company towards that kind of goal. We went beyond Rhode Island pretty quickly. Rhode Island's a small state, and we went beyond Rhode Island pretty quickly. We're across the New England states within 3 or 4 years of my coming on board. We added New York. And as we went west in terms of expanding our business, we found that it was a little bit more less challenging. New England has a lot of uniquenesses to it. A good example is there's 169 cities and towns in Connecticut from which you have to get searches done and you have to get taxes done. So there's a lot of complexity in New England, in the New England states. And as we went west, it was less complicated. It was less complex. So expanding the company in the mid-2000s came relatively easy, I'd say. But it was always pursuing something better and largely in and around the customer experience, meaning the borrower. Our focus early on is in and around the borrower experience, which is really, core to what you do in your support role for what we do. We found that it was important to make sure that the borrower was happy and satisfied. And if they were not, it reflected poorly on the lender, not us. But if we did a good job, it reflected well on them, and then we earned more business from our customers. So the better the job we did with the borrower, and that comes out of innovating around how to do the business as opposed to the way it always been done.
So being a disruptor is sort of like what Equity has been able to do, or has become, which has helped you to scale.
Yeah, I don't know that as disruptive is the right word. I think it's it's just challenging the status quo and finding what works best for our customers and their customers. We don't think about ourselves as a disruptor. There's 150 to 200 different companies that are sitting on the sidelines of the real estate transaction, broadly viewed, with mortgage, real estate, title settlement, and with the label in their heads, well, we're disruptors. And so they're trying to, or they are entering the space, and with an idea that we're just going to disrupt the business. And we don't think about ourselves that way. We just think of ourselves as getting incrementally better every day. I'm a big baseball guy, and I like the metaphor of every transaction that we're involved in represents an at-bat. And when you think about things that way, an at-bat, a baseball player gets maybe 3 or 4 at-bats every game, and they see 4 to 6 pitches. And so that's and success in baseball is 30% of the time you get a hit, which means there's 70% failure. But 70% not so much failure as long as just learn is really more. It's an opportunity to learn from. What did you do? What could you have done better? What pitch did you swing at? Was it out of the bot? Was it out of the zone, etc.? And so we apply that simple logic to. We're learning at every opportunity we have, serve and support customers along the continuum of the things we do. What can we do better? And we apply that and make incremental improvements on every day. And so, if you make a 1 degree, improvement every day, over the course of a year, you're 365, degrees better. So the way we look at it is not to be disruptive, which looks for leaps and, the huge leaps. We're looking for how do we get better every day.
And that's a healthy way to look at it, Jim. I kind of really agree with you. It's something that we do over on the signing services side, which is, we're constantly looking at what, as you said, what can we do? What are we doing? What can we do better? How can we do it differently? And, and we also look at it that if we make a mistake, well, what was the mistake that was created? And how can we prevent from recreating this same mistake? And, self-evaluation and what I'm hearing is really important and to help scaling your business in the direction that you want it to go. So, Jim, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, really, what it is, it's a process improvement mindset. Constantly thinking about how to get better and
yes,
evaluating what do we do, and you learn as much from things that you did well, which as well replicate that as much as things that you didn't do so well. And there's such an opportunity for basically both in the real estate transaction, and there's a lot of moving parts. So it's really just having that mindset. How do you improve? Frankly, it's that simple. How do we get better every day?
And that's part, and that mindset is really, I would imagine, a core component of the company culture. Yes.
Yeah, it is. People have that mindset, getting better incrementally. We practice, what I would call, we have lessons learned. We don't make mistakes. We learn lessons. And they
I like that.
They can be small, they can be big. We've had significant mistakes made, and then we've had minor mistakes made, but there's a lot of nuance, and sometimes you make a mistake, and you can learn a lot. We ask borrowers after the closing, hey, we've been surveying borrowers for probably close to 30 years. In the last, since 2011 through post-closing, it's an electronic survey. We ask, basically it's how did we do, because we don't show up in person. We have our signing agents, and some of whom are yours, that show up and meet with the borrower, but we're not physically present. So we need to have some means by which we can identify, hey, how did we do? And it's not so much to kind of pat ourselves on the back and have the borrower say, hey, you were great. It's really to learn, what we did well. And we ask, particular questions. And from that, we're able to mine it for ways to improve. And it's really very simple. You have to show up on time. You have to be professional. And you have to explain the documents. And we've been doing this for 30 some odd years. We've got over 50,000, I think 55,000 borrower reviews, 45 of which are 5-star reviews. But it's not about getting the review. It's about learning from that feedback. Okay, a real quick story. I had a borrower who responded was not happy with the closing, and I ended up calling him, because I do. Well, if I have a borrower who is not happy with us, I'll call them and talk to them, just as much as somebody who says, "Hey, you're great." So I spoke to him, and it turned out, in the long story short, that the closing location was something that was a bit of a struggle between us and him. And to make a very long story short, he ended up, arranging for a closing location in kind of a rural area at a car dealership that he was friendly with. And so we ended up consummating it that way, which is not our preference. But what was happening is our people were not aligned with what he was saying. And when we talked, it turns out that it was really a very small thing, but it was meaningful to him. And when we look at it in the scheme of things, well, how do we miss? How do we, what did we miss there? And I understood how our people were responding to his inquiries, but at the same time, he had a peculiar or particular issue, but we were dull to it. And so what we do is we learn from that kind of, well, what happened, and you kind of reset how our people are approaching things, and you did an awful lot of communication by email. And what I found was no one really picked up the phone and said, hey, hang on a second, I'm not sure if I understand this. And if we had done that, probably would have, all I did was call him up and say, hey, what did we not do right? And he told me. So if we had figured that out early, we wouldn't have had a borrower who was unhappy. However, taking that feedback, it just improves how we, perform. We want to make sure you dot an I, cross a T, and it makes for a better experience for the borrower. So it turns out, we had a good conversation, and, we learned a lot from that. He was a kind of fascinating guy, and he made some recommendations to me, which I took. He does process improvement for his employer. And he recommended a couple of books for me, not in a bad way. Just said, hey, do you know this? Do you know this book? Do you know this other book? And I didn't. And so he recommended them. I bought them and started to read them. So it's kind of you can turn something bad into something good.
Yep. And I love that concept, Jim. And that is really, again, something that we really do at Signing Services America on a daily basis. And we're always looking for how we improve. We're always looking for how do we know, how well do we know our client? What are our client's expectations? And how do we match those expectations with deliverables? And when we miss the mark, then we have to look at, well, why did we miss the mark? And what was done? And how could it have been avoided? Sure. And once we have been able to drill down to really what is the issue that caused us not to hit the mark, then that becomes a new policy for the company, and that becomes a new systems, and then that becomes the way we do business.
Sure.
And that is what's allowed us to be in business for 9 years, and also what has allowed us to have a successful collaboration with Equity National Title for a number of years.
Yep. Yes. Very true. Very true. You have the same philosophy.
Yeah. Jim, I was the first time we had a chance to talk was over a file that that you'd given us to sign, and one of the things you asked me was, let's follow the evidence. And I said, wow, that was a really interesting way of looking at things. And my father, may he rest in peace, was a New York City a decorated New York detective.
Yep.
And he was always saying to me, Phillip, follow the evidence, and the evidence won't lead you wrong. But if you don't follow the evidence, and that means everything that could possibly be involved in that particular issue is considered evidence, and you go until you can't go any further. And once you have gotten to the end of that road, then that's where the problem is. That's where the issue is. That's where you really need to really start looking to how to correct things. And so that conversation that I had with you was really an opportunity to have a meeting of the minds of leadership. And it really connected me to something I learned from my father. And here we are today, talking about, how do we constantly improve our company? And I think that's one of the exciting things I wanted to have you on the show for us, Jim, because to be in business for 35 years, it's a phenomenal accomplishment. And many people have difficulty scaling their companies. And, they think it's the marketing. They think it's the lack of funding. They think it's the lack of having a decorated office. But what I'm hearing from you, it's the ability to look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, and are your clients satisfied with it, and this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, to go back to the finding the evidence, I like to say it's what are the facts? Just tell me the facts. People, I'm not interested in opinion, and I don't say that in a harsh way. I just don't want opinion. I want facts. Tell me the facts, and we'll deal with facts from that. And that comes from the law, the legal training in the law school. What are the facts? What are the issues? And you boil it down, and then facts don't lie. So, I think that's a good, healthy perspective to have. I don't think about scaling. To me, it's just getting better every day. Learning every day, and then getting better and applying what you're learning, and scaling takes care of itself. But if you think about being a disruptor, you think about scaling, then that's the wrong thing. You're putting the cart before the horse. You got to do a good job. And if it's a one at a time, to me, and it always has been one at a time business. I get that from baseball. My love of, I played and I coached baseball. It's a net bat thing. It's one at a time. You have to take care of the one transaction at a time. And when you do that and you aggregate enough of them over time, you'll grow. but that's not the, it's not scaling as an objective. It's not to being a disruptor as an objective. It's just doing a good job and over time. And here we are, 35, 36 years. We just celebrated our 36th anniversary last month. Here we are.
Congratulations.
Thank you. When we're finding ourselves still at it, how many companies, broadly are, still in business 36 years later. How many are in this business have been in it for 36 years? We've seen a lot. I'd like to say we've seen about 12, 13 different major changes, inclining in orders, declining in orders based on interest rates. But we've persevered through them all. And the reason for that is because I think the reason we did, because our attitude is one at a time, really.
Mm-hmm. And Jim, that's the other topic that I wanted to talk about, is that over the 36 years you've been in business, you've seen a lot of changes. And you've been in business longer than maybe some people have been on this earth, right? so would you share with us, right?
You're trying to say that I'm an old man?
No, not at all, not at all, man.
Okay.
Not at all.
I'm comfortable with it.
But it is admirable, right? It is admirable to be in business for 35, 36 years, right? I mean, let's just call it what it is and be successful at it, right? So you've seen a lot of changes. And so would you mind kind of like giving us, some of the changes that you've seen over, the 3 or 4 decades that your business has been open and serving the public?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest changes is the technology. Back when we started, I can remember hearing, about electronic closings. This was, I used to joke that, it was a second coming. It was the second, I think I'm going to mix up my metaphors, but that the expectation was it was around the corner. And here we are, 35 years, it hasn't been completely adopted. Change comes slow, but technology has really woven itself into the business. I can still remember when, we used to fax documents, to and from lenders, close a loan and fax documents back and forth. And I remember, when the internet came online, and I'd say, geez, if, with the internet, we're likely going to see communication and exchange of documents accelerated, where we used to have documents, received today for a tomorrow closing from the lender. So they were able to produce documents the day, 2 days before, I guess, and we would receive them today because we would dispatch attorneys or signing agents across the region, because we had receipt of the documents, and they would run across, throughout the region on the next day. And then when we went to the internet, it was like, well, that time is going to shrink, and it's going to be same day. It's going to be, a little bit more same day, which has become. So there's been a lot of application of technology. I think that, the other thing that impresses me in the industry is the resilience of not only us, but the resilience of a lot of lenders who have seen the same ups and downs that we have, how they've adapted, how they've been resourceful, how they overcome challenges, especially those who, think in a similar way. We're sitting here, 35 years, we still have several clients who started with us back 30 some odd years ago. And we're still, working with them, which is a testament to not only us.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But technology is probably the biggest change, that I've seen, and I think we're going to continue to see more of it. Lastly, in and around this, I think that what we're going to, we're in the throes of a transformative moment in the industry. Technology is bringing about a lot of change, but I would say this is all of the information that we have from the borrower is, yes, they want things quicker, faster, better, and all of that, and they want to apply technology where it makes sense. They are still wanting interaction with a human being at key points in the transaction. So I don't think that we're going to relegate the transaction fully to an electronic transaction, meaning button clicking. That's not what the consumer wants. The consumer recognizes that they need help, they need support, they need guidance. And so there's kind of this hybrid human and digital experience that has to emerge, because it's not going to, at least my view, based on borrower data, it's not going to go by way of Amazon clicks. There's a hybrid model that I think emerges from all of this. This is both data feedback, but also conversation feedback with borrowers. So moving completely to a digital experience, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I think that, at key points in the transaction, the borrowers need a human being, and one of them is in and around the closing experience. At least that's our view, and we're hoping that we're right. We don't know that we're right, but we're hoping that we're right.
And so then that's good stuff, Jim, because like I said, over the years, you have seen the evolution of, one phase or another, and your voice has a lot of power because of your experience. And, as we start getting toward the end of our show, just looking over your bio, I just wanted to go back and get something here that I thought was really astonishing, where you have served over the past 10 years. Jim has been a distinguished panelist for October Research webinars and conferences. Would you share with our audience, first, I know what October Research is, but share with our audience what is October Research and what are some of the topics that you talked about in your webinars?
October Research is an organization that publishes a number of trade publications within the industry that we subscribe to: the title report, legal description, RESPA news, etc. So they cover the range of interest in the industry, and they also do webinars, they do seminar, conferences, etc. So they have a pretty loyal customer base. The webinars that I've done range, kind of range in topic. The one that I did not that long ago was basically safe and secure transactions. That has to do with the the hacking risks that exist in the industry and what do you do about it. And usually they're aimed at having a couple of panelists who are either experienced in the topic or an expert. I'm experienced, not an expert. And the audience is typically title agents, sometimes they're lenders, some kinds of compliance people. So what it serves is an opportunity for us to share our experiences and share any expertise we may have in a particular topic. One that I did probably a year ago or so had to do with the change in the real estate real estate industry, where the commissions were being brought into question. Was a change from based on legal outcomes, where the selling agent couldn't necessarily compel basically where the seller or the buyer would have had the ability to would have to pay for the broker, the buyer broker agent, and couldn't necessarily piggyback on the seller commission. I'm probably paraphrasing that poorly, but and then basically we've been having some conversation about, well, what do you think is going to happen? And so there's the insight that we have in the industry that sometimes is seen as valuable. But the topics are broad. They cover the whole the whole range of the industry, and so those are just a couple that come to mind.
Great. Thank you for that. And then my final question to you, Jim, is that, again, we have tremendous respect and appreciation for your dedication to the industry and to have been in this is a tough business, and you have to be able to, at the end of the day, when things don't go right, still get up and get after it the following day, the next day, and so forth. And you've been able to do that over countless times and days and weeks and months and years. And it's very, very impressive. And if there's a bit of advice that you could give to possibly the new title agent or a title agent who's aspiring to become the president of a company, what would that be?
Well, I think, to kind of go back to my baseball analogy is you can't think about, you can't think too far ahead. You basically, just show up every day, work hard. Basically, I ask myself the real simple question every day: how can I be valuable to my customers? And so I orient myself that day to what it is that will help my customers see us as valuable or being valuable to them, so that they can improve, they can do better, they can grow their business as well. It's as simple as that. If you're valuable to your customer, then you're gonna be fine. It's a day-to-day thing. I try not to think too far ahead. Again, what am I doing with that at bat today? What am I doing? How am I going to get on base? How am I going to advance the runner? It's really as simple as that. I guess it's a philosophy that's born out of playing sports, growing up, being, active in sports, being particularly active in baseball. I love the metaphors associated with baseball. There's more failure in baseball than there is in any other sport, I think. Think about it. Hall of Fame is a 300 batting average. It means 70% of the time you didn't get on base, and so that you could say that's failure, but to me it's lessons learned. So it gives a lot of opportunities, and every day it's a very humbling experience. But if I approach myself every day with how can I be valuable, the days, the weeks, the months, the years all take care of themselves.
Great advice, and thank you for that. How can I be valuable to my customer? That is powerful, and we're going to end right there. So Jim, listen, this has been a show that I have been looking forward to doing for a long time.
Yeah.
And not only do we, as speak to you as a CEO of Signing Service America, appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you over the years, but I certainly appreciate the time that you've given us today to share with us, your humble beginnings, the process for where you have gotten to today. And your bit of advice that I think it can apply to anybody across the service spectrum, which is how can I bring value to my customer? Yeah. So Jim, listen, man, thank you so much for the time. It was really, really enjoyable and remarkable, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side where we hook up on the signing services side.
Yep, I'm honored, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and help each other. So thank you.
You're more than welcome, and thank you as well.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Closing Market Weekly. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone in the industry. For more insights from the front lines of real estate closings, we'll see you next week.